I'm Dr. Martin Kashara, Associate Professor for Engagement in STEM at the University of Wolverhampton, and welcome to the My Life in Science podcast. This is a specially commissioned podcast for Life Sciences Week. As we've said, the West Midlands is a thriving place. It's a region of pioneers that drives industry, innovation, really makes real world change. We've got world-class universities and research institutions and a vibrant ecosystem of business that creates breakthroughs in healthcare and the life sciences. And of course, West Midlands Life Sciences Week is bringing together business leaders, researchers, investors and policymakers to showcase what makes this region absolutely exceptional and shape the future of the life sciences industry. Now, here on the My Life in Science podcast, what we're doing is we're meeting some of those people who are driving change and innovation across our region and finding out a little bit about them and, of course, what makes them tick. And today, I am very, very pleased to say that I'm joined by the amazing Lynn Yap, who's Strategic Managing Director of the Altruistic Capitalist and Non-Executive Director of Hugh HD. How you doing, Lynn? How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show today, Martin.
Thank you for joining us. I know you've got a very busy schedule. So again, thank you for taking the time out of your life to sit and have our interview today. Okay, so, people being people, our listeners out there, we always want to find out a little bit about the people we're listening to. Now, I know you, and we talked about this already, but I know you don't come from what many people might consider a traditional life sciences background. So how about you tell us how you've got to where you are today and how that has shaped your thinking so far?
Well, yes, thank you again. Thank you very much for this opportunity and also the opportunity to share a little bit about myself. And indeed, my background is quite unusual. I like to describe my background as T-shaped. So the horizontal bar of the T, if you may, started out with my first career as a corporate lawyer. I graduated from the University of Nottingham in law, went and worked in investment banking, so finance, and then ended up working in brand and innovation with companies such as Adidas and Estée Lauder, all of which is underpinned by deep functional experience of the vertical bar of the T, which is founded on data and analytics. And what all that means is being very focused on customer feedback, understanding what people want, what their frustrations are, which has driven all the decisions that's related to brand and innovation, specifically in my later career, in spite of all the different industries and roles that I've had. It's a curiosity to do what is interesting at the moment. And I think life sciences is really at a cusp of something super interesting at the moment. And West Midlands particularly is quite a thriving region for this. And hence that's kind of why I'm really behind Life Sciences Week and what we're preparing for coming this September. And all the startups and organizations that are driving the change in this region and in the industry.
Yeah, and it's going to be an absolutely knockout week. You know, all the people I've been talking to about Life Sciences Week 2025, everybody's so excited about the prospect of bringing all these partners together to produce something fantastic. So everybody, I'm sure, is going to take something absolutely amazing from their time together. Obviously, you've had quite a varied career, and but there seems to be a thread in some of that of creativity. You know, even in law practice, I'm sure creativity is at the heart, and it's something that is often forgotten, particularly in the sciences. You know, it might be seen as a bit of a nice to have almost. So, in your experience, how can that sort of creative thinking unlock better solutions?
I really like that question. I think it's quite important. Creativity plays a role in every industry and every function, even in law. When I went into Nottingham to study law, I expected it to be, everything is black and white. But what I learned really, there's a lot of gray, and what that means is you have to be able to see many different perspectives, and that's very important in anything that you do. To be able to take the position of being able to see from many different perspectives, and in the case of life sciences, to look at the underserved community as well. What are their needs? What are their frustrations? You can't just design for the one average person. Understanding that we are all different, especially when it comes to health, yeah, just being very aware of that. And why I think creativity, a lot of times in growing up, creativity is associated with arts and design type subjects, but creativity has it's more than just that. It's thinking out of the box. It's again looking at different perspectives, taking the position of someone else, and I think that's a skill and a mindset that you can develop over time. And that could be, learning a different subject. Even, if you have a particular route that you take to go to school or go to work every day, if you just take a different route, just expanding your mind muscle to think in a different way, that can actually develop your creativity, and that can unlock a lot of different solutions. I feel instead of just thinking in one single way. Particularly when I've worked with younger people, I feel like they offer a lot of creative ideas because they've not been in this role or this industry for a long time, and they can always come up with a curveball or something that's I haven't thought of before. And so I think creativity is something that's much broader than just what we sometimes think of as art and design.
We often forget about creativity, but also creative play. I think there's a lot of room for experimentation with no boundaries. And I think some of the the most fantastic groups that I've worked with or people I've spoken to, they're artists that have gone into, let's say, a life sciences environment or a healthcare science environment, and they've had informal interaction with the people there, and then took innovation away in that way. And
Yeah.
I think creativity, it is key, and I think it's, of course, something we should help people develop in any way we can, especially here at university.
Yeah, I think one of the best exercises that I've done with some of my clients and in previous workshops is to play off improv. Where someone starts off with something and then you build on that, and you just feedback and riff off each other. And I think that creates that to build on your point, experimentation, listening to what feedback is coming back from what you've just said, what you've just put out there, and that's all the basis of improv. Again, it's not something that you create, you would connect to healthcare or life sciences, but these are certain skills that are core when you're designing for people, that you want to think about, like how is it that we can really listen to what's coming back to us from the person that we're interacting with, the person whom we're trying to build a relationship with. And that's, I think, very important in life sciences.
When we are being creative, of course, we need to also try and understand the customer, don't we? Because they're the end user, really. In your industry, what does it actually mean to understand the customer? How might it look different from how life sciences might typically approach it?
I think coming from an industry that's consumer, I've worked a lot with tech platforms as well, so very much online digital services. I think at the core of it, we really need to understand who it is that we're dealing with. So putting ourselves in their shoes, having empathy is very important. Building trust is a second thing that's very important. And then what I mentioned before, feedback. So really listening to the customer, really listening to the patient in the life sciences case, and building feedback loops and understanding okay, what is it that's not working for them? How can we actually improve the product or the service for the patient? And that's the same with empathy, going back to underserved communities as well. Really build a product that's not just one size fits all, but the little nuances for each group.
Yeah, for sure. And you did mention underserved communities there. One of the main focuses of the University of Wolverhampton through its 2035 plan is to create inclusive communities. And what steps do you think should an organisation take to reach some of these underrepresented groups in STEM? Have you got any advice about that?
I do. I have also some experience, and I'm going to use the experience with an organization that I used to lead called Activate Network. And one of the really interesting projects that I did was one of my clients, they wanted to introduce a new curriculum, the education provider, I should have said. And they wanted to introduce a new curriculum in sustainability for secondary school students. And I suggested to do like a design thinking workshop with these students as well, and they happen to be also students from that were interested in STEM subjects, but also from underserved communities. And what came out from that workshop was actually quite interesting. What they thought was important in terms of the content was quite different for them. Sustainability was quite broad. It was not just about environmental engineering, for instance. There's a lot more about sustainability, and that's really how we should be thinking about a lot of jobs nowadays. Is everything is very broad. It's all around us. And the other thing is also how we deliver it. And that was a very good case study of how when we really listen to people that we don't usually think of, because these were executives who had been in their role for 10, 15 years, and these were and the students who were part of this design workshop with them, they were 13, 14 years old, all girls. And again, it was quite powerful because it gave the executives something to think about in terms of how they were designing for their target customer, which was them. And also the other added benefit was the girls felt so confident because they felt heard. And it probably did some unintended consequence, unintended impact of them also remembering the company and the brand, because they had come into contact with the brand so early on in their lives. Like, oh, I'm going to look out for this brand in the future because I'd worked and spoken to some of the people who work there, and I really like what they do. So there was the unintended consequence, I think, of also bringing these two groups together who would not usually come together to create a new product.
I love the idea of all these very important executive types being given what for by a group of students, being,
Yes.
and hopefully they learn as much from the students as the students learn from them. And there seems to be a lot of power in innovation, in co-production with
Yes.
communities, particularly.
Mhm.
Do you think that is something that, potential innovators should consider, this idea of co-production?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. You can't create something in a vacuum. This was also something I had seen time and time again, whether it was, designing a service with Avon or some of the platforms. I also work on a platform that was trying to bring together older adults so that we could reduce and mitigate the loneliness problem. I think we can only design and create solutions, whether it's services or products, by actually connecting with the end user. Behavioral adoption is so important. Just observing them or shadowing them and understanding, oh, this is how they're looking at the website. This is how they're interacting with the product. These are some of the challenges or the friction that's coming up in their journey. How can we remove that? The hospitality industry, the travel industry, for instance, it's one that's very focused on trying to remove that friction and making it more seamless, making that customer journey, that user journey, very enjoyable and full of ease. And then I think that's something that we adopt as well for life sciences. How is it that we can make it easy for the patient to change their habits? For instance, I'm a big proponent of preventative medicine, and so how is it that we can make it easier for them to move or to pay more attention to their nutrition and to change some of those habits. So yeah, I think speaking to behavioral scientists is also quite important to understand, like, how is it that we should design the products.
Obviously, that sort of user interface part, that UI sort of part of a product, is something I guess that innovators really think about. But do you think they need to really think about that user experience, the UX, a bit more?
I've found in the past, when I do innovation type workshops, it's important to have different people in the journey. Often in large organizations, departments work in silos. So you have like finance working in one department, marketing and the markets or commercialization. They all work on their own. I think it's important to have different people in the room. One, you have the different perspective, which has the advantage of creating more creative energy in that room. The more different perspectives there are, engineers versus designers, for instance, in the same room, the more friction there is, and I think the more interesting conversations you can have and more interesting products and services that you can create as well. The other reason I think for doing that is I think you remove some of the potential challenges. For instance, if you have like a scientist that comes up with a brilliant innovation, brilliant new discovery, scientific discovery, but you don't have someone, for instance, in marketing that can make it accessible to actually explain what it does, to actually tell and inspire the patient to want to adopt this solution, then it could fall on that journey as well. You have the solution, but the adoption you haven't actually thought about. Similarly with finance, do you have actually you've created this new medicine, but you know who's actually going to pay for it? How is it going to be funded? How is it going to reach your end beneficiary? So I think it's important at the start to have different voices in the room. I'm a big proponent of that, not just for the diversity of opinions, but also, you want to cover the entire user journey.
Now, if you could be the angel sitting on the shoulder, every new health tech founder, what's the piece of advice that you would whisper in their ear?
I would get them to talk to the person that they want to help most, actually. Them who is their target customer, who is their target patient. Observe them, really understand their frustrations, walk in their shoes for a day, and that way you can design something that's of value, that actually delivers value to them. Also scales adoption. I think that's very important. All of that also helps with building trust and relationship with the customer or end user at the end of the day.
Now, obviously, I'm sitting here in a place of learning, and we've been giving people skills in STEM on the site I'm actually sitting on since 1827 in the Wolverhampton Mechanics Institute, which, of course, is now the main building of the University of Wolverhampton here in Wolverhampton City Centre. I'm sitting at the beginning of the journey for our life science investors. So if I had a student that was really interested, really keen, and had a really good idea, what advice could you give to them?
I always think that if you're passionate about something, don't give up on your idea. You always get a lot of naysayers. This is particularly with if they're coming to a point where they need to start pitching to a lot of people. I say don't give up to. I would say don't give up to that student. I've helped lots of founders with pitching on term sheets and their pitch decks and stuff. Believe in yourself and keep moving forward. I say, especially if you've done your research and your homework, understanding what problem is, really understand what the problem is, and know that your solution delivers value. I would say don't give up.
That's fantastic advice. Lynn, it's been absolutely fantastic. That's all the time we've got today. And so I'd just like to say a massive thank you from the My Life in Science podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Martin, for having me on the show.
The My Life in Science podcast was presented by Dr. Martin Kashara of the University of Wolverhampton and was a STEM response team production for West Midlands Life Sciences Week. If you want to know more about what's happening in your area, just jump online and go to wmlifesciencesweek, all one word, .co.uk to find out how you can be involved.